every day to the world and to your heart. Open up your eyes and let your spirit start. Say yes to the dreams you hold inside. Let your soul be your guide.
In today's complex mortgage world, finding the right direction can be challenging. That's where Lighthouse Advisors comes in. With over 25 years of experience, we provide fractional leadership and executive oversight, guiding companies through transitions, growth, and innovation. From IMBs to brokers to credit unions to tech firms, our team of seasoned professionals is here to shine a light on solutions, ensuring your business thrives in every environment. At Lighthouse Advisors, we don't just guide, we empower. Together, let's create a ripple of success across the industry. Email us today at laura@lighthouseadvisors.com.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Wednesday Wisdom. Today, we are joined by the amazing Soha Al-Jurf. She is the founder of Voice Coaching for Creatives. Soha, thank you so much for saying yes to being here with us today, and we can't wait to hear all of your insights and wisdom. To kick us off, Soha, we'd love to hear. Please share with us, what is one of the best pieces of advice that you have ever received from someone, or maybe something that you've learned, and how has that influenced your life?
The best piece of advice, I loved these questions, by the way. They were so fun to reflect on. But what I came to was sing. And that encompasses really my entire life on so many levels. And most recently I was told to sing by a horse. So let me explain. So I went to a writing workshop actually, and it was called You Have the Right to Heal. It was run by a woman named Kim Green here in Tucson. And she had us do a bunch of different activities that were meant to be kind of healing activities, and then we would write about them. And one of them was she had us go to a horse ranch where the horses are therapy horses. And some therapy horses are ridden, these are not. And so the women who run this ranch have a technique that they use where you essentially telepathically communicate with the horses to figure out kind of what's going on. They use it for healing. So we went as a group. And my first instruction was to kind of feel into my body and get a sense of what my body was feeling, where there were any stuck points, what I was experiencing physically. And the first thing that I noticed, I had been eating differently from how I normally eat because I was at this retreat. So I had a stomach ache. So I said, well, the first thing I noticed is that my stomach hurts because I just ate a bunch of wheat and dairy and sugar, and I'm feeling kind of bad. And the trainer said, okay, well, check in with that since it's the thing that draws your attention first, and just see if it has a message for you. And so I said, well, there's something that kind of wants to come up. I don't think I want to throw up, but some sort of energy seems to want to come up. And she said, okay, well, why don't you let that come up? So I did, and it got lodged in my throat. And she said, okay, well, now check in with that energy and see what that has to tell you, what message that might have for you. And so I paid attention to that sort of sensation in my throat, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? What's stuck? And the word that came to me was sing. And I started to chuckle, and the horse trainer said to me, what did it say? And I said, sing. And she said, do you sing? And I said, not really. And I was with a group of people who were there who all started to laugh because my whole life I've sung. My undergraduate degree is in singing and opera training. I train opera singers for a living, and my entire business and all of my friends, my entire community, everything that's ever happened in my life has happened from this core essence of the fact that I sing. Now, when I say I don't sing, it's because I no longer get on stage and do it professionally, although this horse has made me think that maybe I should. So she said, okay, now I want you to turn and face the horse and see what he has to say. And so I turned and faced the horse, and I just started crying. inexplicably sobbing. And so she said, okay, now go into the horse, stand by the horse and see what happens. So I go in, and mind you, I have no experience with horses. This is a very, very large animal.
Yeah.
And when I had gone in just to brush him, he had been like headbutting me in the chest. Like, this horse did not like me. He was not fond of my energy. He had nothing, like, he was just like, you get out. I want nothing to do with you. So he had already kind of established himself as somebody who didn't respect me, was dominant over me. And it wasn't working out for us. So I was like, all right, now I'm going to go into this big, large beast. And what am I going to do? So I went in and I just sort of telepathically asked him, you want me to sing? And he just kind of turned to me. I mean, this was nonverbal.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, you want me to sing? And he sort of turned to look at me a little bit, but he wasn't headbutting me. And I was like, do you want me to sing now? And so I was like, all right, I might as well try it. So right there on the spot, I just sang one of my favorite opera arias that I used to sing when I was studying singing. And I still sing in my kitchen and in my shower. And I've trained in, probably hundreds of opera singers. So I just sang it to him really super quietly and really nervously. And this horse just like nuzzled his cheek up against my cheek and then kind of like came back and made eye contact with me with his one side eye, and then started just like nuzzling into my neck and licking my arm. And I was like, oh, it was such a bizarre experience. And all of the people who were kind of outside waiting, the rest of my group, everyone was crying. And even the horse trainer was like, I've never seen anything like it. So I just kept singing very shakily. And this horse kept responding and sort of giving me horse hugs. And it was pretty amazing. And I realized that whether when I was younger, everyone thought I was going to be a professional singer. And that has not been the course my life has taken. And so I think there's always been a part of me that thinks, well, I'm not a singer. I didn't do it. And yet so many times in my life from when I was small, when I was little and I was in grade school even, my grade school singing teacher was like, you have a beautiful voice, you should sing. In high school, I got all the roles in the musicals. Mm-hmm. And this assumption that the trajectory was going to be that someday I was going to be on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera singing didn't happen. And so I pulled back from that and thought, well, I don't sing. Well, then I got a degree in speech pathology, which was focused on working with voice and singers in particular. I then got a contract with San Francisco Opera where I was working with singers. And it's just funny because I don't think of myself as a singer per se. And yet it has been the cornerstone of my entire life.
So then what did you learn from it? How did that experience change the way you see yourself?
With the horse or just in general?
Yeah, well, the horse kind of made you reflect, right? It kind of made you look inward and have a little bit of self-awareness. So what was the thought process that came from that?
Well, I think prior to singing to the horse. Yeah. I would say singing with, but he didn't really sing along. But prior to singing to the horse, I had been kind of wondering, is it time for me to get on stage again?
Right.
And I have been contemplating that. And also the other thing it makes me contemplate, and I've had this sort of communicated to me during meditations and in sort of spiritual ceremony when I'm kind of seeking. Mm-hmm. I've been told sing, like, why don't you sing? Right. And I think one of the things that we underestimate is our own singing's power to heal us when we're sad, when we're searching. And I think in our society, there's this assumption that you only sing if you're on a stage, or you only sing if somebody invites you to, tells you your voice is beautiful, whatever it is. And otherwise, we don't just sing on our own during meditation or on our own when we're feeling sad and need to emote and get stuff out of us. There's always this judgment in our culture around singing, especially because I'm in the opera world. Yeah. So much about the opera world is, do you have what it takes? Are you good enough? Are you going to make it? And that's not really what it has to be about. Singing is not always about professional singing. So there's definitely, in Tucson, there are a lot of venues that are just fun venues where amateurs sing all the time. Yeah. And so I've thought about connecting with a band and just seeing what happens if I try to do. Why not? folk or, some other genre other than opera. And I can always incorporate opera. But yeah, I think one thing is, am I really being called to share my voice publicly?
Right?
And am I being asked to just recognize that I'm never going to get away from this? It's core to
No,
who I am. It is who I am,
it's your
whether
gift too.
it,
It's your
yeah.
gift.
And it's
Yeah.
not something to just be tossed aside, thrown away, or forgotten about. And it's
Mm.
also really core to what I do in my business and
Yeah.
as my business has developed. So it's everything. The voice is
Yeah.
everything
It
for me.
is.
Yeah. So it's
It's
sort of
it's actually funny, Soha. I am recovering from a bad cold. So
mm,
last week, I actually almost lost my voice. Like even now, I'm like kind of pushing my voice
um,
stronger than I normally would. And I'm very well known for my projection and my power of speaking. Right? My singing is words, right? It's speaking. And when I struggled last week without having that, I literally was saying, I feel like I lost my superpower. I
yes.
feel like my lack of voice. I kept referring it like Little Mermaid when Ariel doesn't have her voice and she has to try to communicate in another way. And it's so interesting we're having this conversation because the power of our voice and how we utilize it, whether it is in word or song or inflection or all of that, it is so powerful and unique to each one of us
Yes.
because every single one of us has that difference. And I love that you understand how powerful that is and that you are leaning into understanding that you need to share this with the world even more. So thank you for that journey. That I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. All right. Well, now I want to go into leadership, right? We I believe that number one, leadership is not title, leadership is not accolade, leadership is not success. Leadership is, this natural ability that we all have. And I'd love to hear from your perspective. I'd like you to give us what is one of the most important traits of leadership?
I think humility.
Ooh.
I think the thing, especially with young leaders, when young leaders transition into leadership, I think they often think that they're supposed to know everything, have control over everything, run the ship. And then when you meet more seasoned leaders and they've been knocked around a few times, you see that what they've learned is that yes, they have power, and how they yield that power is what's going to determine whether people follow them or not. So I often describe leadership as you're the one who's sitting in the chair. So whether you're sitting in an office chair and people come into you as CEO, or you're leading a workshop, or you're doing a presentation, you're the one who's in the chair. And being in the chair, even if you're just a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is, you're in that position of power. And in theory, people come to you and they assume that power just because you're in the chair. And so from my perspective, the most important thing in leadership is to assume, recognize, acknowledge, embrace, embody the power, and then to see that you have it. And once you really have it and you're leading from there, you have to let go of all of the insecurity that came prior to really stepping into that power. And then once you have that, you have the power, it's real, you trust your own expertise, you trust your own experience, and you've been knocked around and I dare say humiliated a few times,
Mhm.
then you actually can have real humility. And then when people come to you and they perceive that you have power that they don't, then you can start to hand that power over to them, be genuinely interested in hearing what they have to say or contribute, not become defensive or threatened by anyone else's power, and have genuine humility to say, you know what, I'm standing in my power, and the fact that I'm standing in my power gives me the space and the grace to really listen and to believe that anyone from a 2-year-old to a 100-year-old could have something really, really wise and meaningful to say. And I want to hear it because I don't know everything. And the more power I have, the more I step into that, the more embodied that is, the more I really recognize how little I know. And so,
All of us. Mhm.
yes, exactly. And so that humility becomes real. And I think, again, I think especially for those, I just started working with a team when I started my new company, Voice Coaching for Creatives, and my signature program, Soundscapes of the Psyche. And gratefully, a few of my first encounters with my team were embarrassing for me in the sense that of how I handled things. It was like this archetype or this kind of complex of the person in power took over. And I behaved arrogantly, and kind of like the authoritative father came in, and the sort of like, how dare you sort of came in. And I made one of my team members cry.
Oh no.
I know. And luckily she's the daughter of a good friend of mine, and I've known her since she was 8. So it was easily or relatively quickly remedied. And I was able to then bring it into, whoa, a complex just took me over. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So that humility and that ability to say, you know what, just because I'm in new power doesn't mean I have to act like some authoritative dad figure all of a sudden, or some concept we have of the person sitting in the chair.
Well, that usually comes from our own internal insecurity.
100%.
That's where that comes from. But to your point, you can't see that in that particular moment. But that is, as time goes on and you have more experiences, you can look back and you can understand that. And that's why, I mean, believe me, Soha, everything you just described, yeah, been there, done that, through my career. And you realize that that's where mentorship and menteeship, I believe, is so valuable. To your point, every single day we're learning, every single day we're growing, every single day, there's more, right? And I don't care where you are in your life. And that's why you should always be a mentee and be a mentor, because in both sides, there's something you can learn and something you can share with someone else. And you're right. Have that humility and understand that we all are trying to figure it out, right?
Yes.
And it really doesn't matter how long you've been doing something,
Yep.
You're figuring it out. And it's interesting that there was a point, 2019 was the first time that I started a podcast. And I did it in 2019 because at that time I was the president of a very large company and an owner of the company. And I realized everybody yesed me. That no matter what I said, they just agreed and they yesed me. So I decided that I was going to challenge myself to speak to other people outside of my industry that didn't yes me, and I was going to learn about them, because I realized that if I didn't start challenging myself to learn from outside people and to open myself up to realize I don't know. I know this little teeny tiny bit of the world. There's so much more for us to learn. And I highly recommend that. Like even us, for everybody listening to this, Soha and I don't know each other. We literally met through LinkedIn connection. And I saw that I was like, this is an interesting woman that I want to learn about and I want to get to know. And she said yes to coming and sharing her brilliance with all of us. And every single day we should continue to do that in our lives. Because as I'm listening to you, I'm like, wow, I needed to hear some of this today. I needed to hear about sing, and I needed to hear about humility. And we all need to hear about different things from each one of us. So thank you for that. That was brilliant. All right. I need to ask my most favorite question of all. All right. I call this my magic wand question. That if today I had my magic wand, that I could say to you, give me your moonshot of something that you would want to achieve. And it doesn't have to be in business. It could be, I want to climb Mount Everest. I want to, start a school for, women in this aspect, whatever it is. If I had that magic wand of I could make that happen, and you don't need to know how to make it happen, what would it be? What is that thing that you would like to achieve in your life?
There are a lot of things. I mean, one is just to the question sort of that accompanied that was something about how do you stay motivated
Yeah.
and focused on your goals. And how I stay motivated and focused on my goals is I'm very, very fortunate to have a core group of people, sort of my core five, I call them. And one of them, my cousin, has been with me since I was 4. My brother's in there, my older brother's in there. So, and then other girlfriends of mine have been in my life since I was 25. So that's 25 years now. So my core group of people is what keeps me grounded. And in terms of what you just talked about, in terms of that mentor-menteeship, my vision. So let me back up a second. Why I brought that up is that one of my moonshot ideas or goals is that I want to keep those people in my life forever, and therefore I want to keep them feeling appreciated, loved. I work very hard on those relationships because they are the reason I survive. They're the core, like, grounding home base for me. No matter where I am in the world, what's going on, I have these core 5 people, and without them, I couldn't do anything. So one very, very important vision for my life is that they stay in my life.
Nice.
And that they continue to know how much I appreciate them. As far as my dream vision outside of my immediate kind of just survival and living goes to what you were describing as that mentorship, menteeship that we always need. And I know, especially when I was in my 30s, I just turned 50 in September, but when I was in my 30s, what I really, really wanted more than anything was a mentor. It's sort of like we get out of our 20s and, kind of get into the world, and then it's just more difficult unless you're specifically in a job that requires you to have a mentor. Finding somebody that can guide you through those 30s and into kind of where I'm at now is difficult. And because my love is in the arts, I have this vision of finding ways to get multiple generations of, for me, it's ideally women, to have this kind of multi-generational mentorship network. And in particular, what I would love to do is to have an annual arts festival.
Nice.
Where I can sponsor artists in residence, so a filmmaker, a dancer, a painter, a writer, all to be in the same space together for a year. And while they're there, they are mentored by ideally whoever they admire. So ideally, they would pick their mentor. And so a writer would say, I really wish I could be mentored by this writer. And in turn, that sort of middle young artist, kind of middle of career artist would mentor somebody younger.
Yeah.
And that would just kind of continue. And so this group of resident artists in residence would spend a year together creating their own individual art. They'd be paid, they'd have housing, and then they would have little kind of casitas around a central performance space, beautiful, some sort of gallery space or just a big open space for them to do art, do performance, create, put stuff on walls, do whatever it was they needed to do. And then at the end of the year, that whole group would somehow come together to put on a festival of some sort in that space. So that's my kind of dream vision.
Well, I am a big believer that dreams have to be planted before they grow. And what you just did is you just planted that dream. And I love that. I could literally envision it as you were describing it. I could picture it. Have you ever been to Frank Lloyd Wright's, place in Scottsdale? of what he built. Oh, so I was almost picturing that. You have to go there. Where
Yeah.
when he was alive, what he did is he built. It's called Talisman West, and he built this beautiful architectural building where he would bring young architects back in, I think it was like in the 30s or 40s, and they would come there and live there in Arizona and learn how to be an architect and be mentored. And then, like, that, it was almost what you were describing, but from an architectural standpoint. And that I was almost picturing that whole type of thing. And you know, it's beautiful. If anybody gets to go and visit it, it's a beautiful place to kind of envision these young people coming and learning and getting that mentorship and becoming great architects of their time. So you just planted it. I can already envision it and can't wait to know when that happens. And listen, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with all of us. Please, how can people learn more about what you do? How can they connect to you? Please share your information.
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. They can also just email me directly, sohaaljurf at gmail.com, my full name. I also have a website, sohaaljurf.com, where they can find out about me. And I'm happy, if anybody wants to learn more, I'm happy to do a discovery call, a free discovery call, just so we can chat. So on my website and other places, there's a Calendly link to just schedule a 30-minute discovery call. Otherwise, you can reach out to me just by Gmail, sohaaljurf at gmail.com.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining us and keep shining brightly.
Thank you for having me.